Hi everyone, this is Gary with MACMOST.com, and this is another live episode. This time I'm going to be taking a look at the photos up on the Mac and just looking at some tips and tricks that I've gathered over time that you may enjoy if you like using the Photos app. Okay, so the Photos app, of course, I'm talking about the one that comes with your Mac, and it's what I store all my photos in. It's what I recommend everybody does. It's basically like a file system, but for your photos. So the Finder gives you access to the file system for all files and stuff, but the Photos app is basically for photos and other media like videos and such. And there's a ton of functionality built into it. I'm actually working on a new version of my photos course, which will be out soon. But for now, I just want to look at some specific tips and tricks. So let's dive in here and take a look at the Photos app. Here I've got some example photos. And the first tip I want to talk about, it's more than one tip actually, is dealing with live photos. So live photos you usually take with your iPhone and you get a little bit of video with the live photo. So for instance, here is one, and this is a picture of a waterfall, and you can see it's indicated at the top here, it shows live. So if I were to move my pointer over where it says live, you can see it plays the little bit of video there. It's like 1.5 seconds before you took the picture and 1.5 seconds after you took the picture. So you could do some things with this besides just having that little bit of video. If I go to edit and then I look here at the bottom, you can see I get that 1.5 seconds of video there. And that allows you to not, uh, not just view it all, you can drag it left or right, but you can also change the keyframe. So you could make the key part of the photo this instead of what it selected. The Photos app is going to choose what it thinks is the best one. And it's very often right, but sometimes not. So you could choose what you want as the one. And uh, let's go ahead and look at this over here, which is the options where my tips are. So basically, the idea is that you can have just the live photo as a live photo, but you have three other modes. One mode here is called loop, and loop works particularly well when you've got a thing like a waterfall. So if I switch to loop, this is what it looks like. It basically loops the video, but it doesn't just loop it. It does a little bit of a fade out and fade in, overlapping the end and the beginning. So for things like waterfalls, it looks like the waterfall is just continuously flowing. Turns out 3 seconds is a pretty good amount of time for this to happen. And it creates this into like this really cool graphic here. So that's like a really cool thing that you could do with your live photos to kind of enjoy them in another way. And I'm going to show you another one here. I've got this one as a live photo as well. At least I thought it was. Actually, I've got a different version of this photo here. I think that is live. So let's go in. I can control click. This is a bonus tip here. If you do a search or you're in an album, you can control click, right click, or two-finger click on a photo and then choose show in all photos, which helps you jump right to the the your all photos library, which is where you can find some things. So yeah, I thought I had a live version of this. Let's go to my live photos, and yeah, this one here is live. At least it should be. Oh, okay. It's live. I just turned it off. I see. So yeah, one of the things you can do is turn it off. So the live photo looks like this. And if I move my pointer over here, you can see it just plays. It's just 1.5 seconds on either side. But I can loop it and you get this nice effect here when it comes to waves and water. Really cool. Now, there's a second tip I want to share with you when it comes to the uh, live photos, and that you could use live photos as a way to do long exposures. So a long exposure, typically what you would do is you would have a camera or, use an app on your iPhone and take a long exposure of something like a waterfall. And then you get this really neat effect. Live photos can be used to generate long exposures. Just select this. And then you get this effect right here. So it's a still image now, but it's doing a couple things. First, it's superimposing all of the frames of the live photo to make this long exposure. The other thing it's doing is it's stabilizing. So if you've moved the camera around a bit, it's cropping out a little along the sides and the top and the bottom so it can, create a good image here. And then it's also really recognizing what is being held still, like the rocks here, and it's not making those kind of fuzzy like it might be. Because the thing about this photo is this photo was handheld. If I tried to take long exposure with, my good camera handheld, it would be a mess because I'd be shaking a little bit as I took the photo. I'd have to mount the camera on a tripod to do it. But with a live photo, I can do it handheld with my iPhone, and then using this menu here, I can switch to long exposure. So that's kind of cool. The other option you've got for live photos is bounce, which is limited in terms of its usability. It's obviously for waterfall here, it doesn't quite generate anything that you'd like to see. But yeah, it could be useful in other situations. So if you've got live photos, and if you don't, maybe start taking some, especially when it comes to things like waterfalls, streams, waves, wind blowing through like, you know, grass or wheat or something, anything like that. And then you could try playing around with the looping and the long exposure. So let's go ahead and look at some other tips here. When it comes to editing photos, there's a lot you can do. And so I can go into this photo here and I can edit it and I can say, oh yeah, look at this. I want to adjust the color. I want to make the color more vivid here. I want to adjust the light as well. It's a little bit dark. Let's increase the brightness. And then you play around with a whole bunch of stuff. Let's bring down the highlights. Let's increase the shadows. Maybe play around with the black point a bit, some contrast. Do a whole bunch of stuff to get the light and the color and maybe some other things like curves and levels like you want. And then you say, done. And you're like, great, that's the photo the way I want it to be. And then you go to your next photo. I'm just going to, you could right arrow or you could just go to the next photo and say, oh no, I've got another photo in the sequence. I took this photo 3 seconds after I took the previous one. And it has the same issues because it's basically just a different view of the same scene. So I got to go back in, edit, and remember what it was I did, play around with it. Or you can go to the first photo, the one where you have your edits, this one here, and you can see all the edits are there. And you can go to image and copy edits. Shift Command C instead of Command C. Once you copy your edits, and you could do this, you have the option here. I'm going to copy all the adjustment here, and that's what it's saying. And also, you can do adaptive, which we'll look at next. I'm just going to do the adjustments. Now, I'm going to go to the next one. I'm just going to right arrow to it, and I can do image and then paste the edits. And it's going to apply all the same settings there. So you could very easily have a sequence of photos and apply the same edits to all of them that way. And then I'll go to the next photo and say, oh no, I've got another photo in the sequence. Well, you can actually do it on multiples because I could select, say, all three of these. And since I copy those edits, I can paste the edits to all three of those at the same time, or 27 of them if that's what you've got. You can see this photo now has those same edits. So you've got that. Um, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to revert to original. Remember, and this is yet another tip, whenever you do editing in photos, you are doing it non-destructively. If you change the lighting, it's not a permanent change. If you crop, it's not a permanent change. You always have the ability to revert to original. Photos has the original photo, and then it remembers the changes you've made. If you've adjusted the brightness up 3% or whatever. So you can always go and remove all those edits, remove the cropping and all of that, revert to original for those, which is nice. You don't have to duplicate a photo and have the original and then the duplicate where you've made changes. So the other thing you could do here is I could go in and if I've changed this photo and, it's, I don't know, brilliance, highlights, brightness, just playing around with it here. Some more saturation of the color. And then I could also do this thing here where I do copy edits. And then I could say adaptive. So that will automatically match the exposure and color of this image when pasting edits. So if I look at these edits here, I go to the next photo and then I say paste edits. It's going to paste it. Let's take a look. I'm going to go left arrow and right arrow. And I can see there's a subtle change here. The exposure was 0. I didn't play with the exposure here on the original photo. But when I pasted this in, it reduced the exposure a little bit. That was part of that adaptive thing there. So another thing to play around with. The effect might be more dramatic if you have other stuff. Matter of fact, let's go and find something here. Maybe that is very different than these. Like, oh, this is a completely different part of the world. What if I were to paste the edits in here and take a look at this? Yeah, you can see how much it adjusted the exposure down when I pasted the edit here, as opposed to the original place I copied the edit was at 0. But the result might be, and is not a very good set of colors, but the result might be that the colors here and the colors here kind of match with each other. So if then you're making a video from this or a slideshow, it's not abruptly changing kind of color palettes as you go between the photos. So some cool stuff that you can do with that. Before I go too much further, I do want to mention that MACMOST is supported thanks to all of the people that support MACMOST through Patreon. So if you go to macmost.com or you get the weekly newsletter, I send out a free weekly newsletter every Thursday, macmost.com/newsletter. Both of those, the website and the newsletter, ad-free. So that's a lot different than if you go to other Mac sites, whether it's news sites or tutorials, they're filled with ads, of course, because that's how, that's how the lights are kept on, right? But I do it through direct support from people that find the videos valuable. So go to macmost.com/Patreon and you could read about it. There's more information there. And people that like to support MacMost because they get value from what I do, they also get some extra benefits. There's extra videos I post to patreon.com every week for supporters, and also course discounts, things like that. So check that out. I'd appreciate it, even if you would just look at it and just, consider it. Keep it in mind, even if not for now, maybe something down the road. So let's go and take a look at some more tips here. This is one I really love. It's the ability to adjust perspective. So let's take this photo here. This photo is of a building and I'm standing on the ground and I have to point the camera up at an angle. And you could see here the line of like these towers because I'm looking up. But what if I wanted a kind of a face-on view of this? Like I was taking a photo from, the about first floor height. So it's not a perspective. I can go to edit here, and if I go to crop, of course I can crop. And matter of fact, I may want to crop out these people like that. That's fine. And I could see these lines, and you could see how, you could see how the perspective of these two towers here. Now, that may be what you want for this photo, indeed. But if that's not, you do have vertical and horizontal perspective changes. So if I take vertical, I can adjust it like this, and I can make it so it's basically squaring off the building like that. So that is kind of a neat effect, and sometimes it's what you want. Like I took this photo here thinking that it would be a cool wallpaper, and well, it would be, except, yeah, there's a bit of a perspective thing going on. However, if I go in here to edit, and then I go to crop, and I can adjust the vertical, and you can see I get those nice lines there. So I can set it up a little bit to be more straight on. Now I think that, or at least maybe a cropped version of that, could be an interesting, say, iPhone wallpaper vertical there. Um, but whereas the original, the perspective there, isn't quite what I was going for. So check that out. You also have horizontal perspective changes too. If you have a photo, you need to adjust that way as well. So something to consider. Um, Here's another tip: getting away from the photo editing. There is the idea that you could search for things by location. Let's go to the library here, and I could search and say Africa, and I can get something from Africa. Or actually, that's too big of a thing. I could say Kenya, and then here's photos that are geolocated to Kenya. But a lot of people say, well, it's a shame that the Smart Album uh, functionality doesn't have that, because you can say all sorts of things like, is, what's in the caption of the photo? How about the date, the album it's in, the title, the camera model? You could do all sorts of things in smart photos. But what if, or smart albums? What if I wanted a smart album that showed all of my photos from Kenya? Well, you could do that, and the trick is text. So text is kind of a catch-all category. It looks in just about anything with the metadata and the title and the caption and all that for something. And of course, text isn't what you want. You want text and, actually, text is what you want instead of starts with or is not. If I do text is Kenya, you can see it matches 21 items. So there's really no indication here. It's kind of a hidden feature that text also deals with location information. So now I've got a Kenya Smart Album that will show me all the photos that have Kenya somewhere in the metadata, including in the location. So kind of a cool tip there if you like smart albums. Um, let's go ahead, and here's another editing thing that I think is really cool. A lot of people say, well, how can I add a caption to this? And it's like, oh, captions. You just get info and you've got a title and you've got a caption right here. You can type something, right here is your caption. Add a caption. Well, that's metadata, or it's actually library data, not metadata. People say, no, 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 that's not what I mean. I want to print some text on the actual photo. So then I could share it with somebody and they actually see something on it. You could do that, and you could do it without leaving the Photos app. So the way to do it is you go to Edit, and then when you're editing, you've got this More button here. And you'll see plugins for all, these are extensions actually, is what they're called, for apps you may have installed. Pixelmator Pro, Affinity, Photos, Acorn, that kind of thing. You're always going to see markup. So maybe you only see markup. It's the only thing you see here. If you go to markup, it allows you to mark up the photo without leaving the Photos app. Notice I'm still in the Photos app. And you can add text. So I can do, I wish, I want to send this to somebody. I've got this. I can put it right here. I can do all the stuff you do with markup tools, like with PDFs in the preview app and such. So I can, let's change the color here to be something that pops a little bit more. Ooh, the yellow, because the yellow will kind of borrow from this, right? So yeah, something like that, kind of yellow there. And then I've even got here shadows. So I can add a shadow, or was there already a shadow there? Yeah, there already was a shadow there. I could do that. Even since I've got a trackpad, I can rotate it a bit. You have to do it with 2 fingers on a trackpad. Um, and I've got text I've added. And I can add a whole bunch of other text. So I can copy and paste the date or location or whatever it is I want onto this. I also can add shapes. So I can do an arrow here, and then I can adjust, the color of the arrow, um, that kind of thing. Uh, all the markup tool stuff you could do. I'll just stick with text. I'll click Save Changes. And now that's there as part of the photo. Done. It's actually on the photo, right? So I could share this out now and, post it somewhere, send it in a message to somebody, and it's got that in it. But of course, that is something you can revert to original with, just like the other edits. So you're not making a permanent change. You're just doing a temporary change there, or, well, permanent as long as you never revert to original like that. A lot of fun to play with that stuff. And you can see it really didn't take me any time. So you could very quickly just add arrows to something, share it out, remove the arrow, that kind of deal. Another cool thing you could do is you can, let's see, the loop tool is a really cool part of it. Let's go into this photo here, edit, more, markup, and then in addition to like arrows and circles and stuff, you can add this loop tool here, which is this circle. You can use the blue arrow to make it bigger, the green arrow to change magnification, like that. Save changes. That's now the photo, but then I can revert to original to get rid of that markup there as well. So got that. Let's take a look at speaking of changing photos, what if you want to clean up a photo? So here's the image I always use for this. There's some spots on this photo here. Look at that there. I mean, that's reality, right? It was there, but let's say I want to, use this in an advertisement I'm creating or a graphic or something, So if you go to edit here, you have, in addition to all these adjustment tools, you've got the, oh, it's not, if you're using an older Mac, you have a retouch tool here. Newer Mac with Apple Intelligence, you've got the cleanup tool here. So it's separate from all the adjustment tools, cleanup. And now you've got your size for the circle. So I'm going to make it a smaller size. And you've got the retouch size here. I have to experiment with those to see what the difference are. Oh, the erase and retouch. You've got two separate things. So this is retouch. The retouch size here, and I could draw over this. I made it too small, but you can see just by selecting that area, it kind of looked at it and said, oh, you want to change that. Command Z works to undo if like you don't get it right or you don't like what it looks like. I want to make this smaller here so I could draw like that. Zooming in helps. Let's do something like this. You just continue to work with it, right? And yeah, you can reset, clean up whenever you want. You also can do an erase here as well. Let's see if I could find something that that's a good thing to erase. Oh, let's go into here. Let's say you like this picture of this flower, but you don't want the flower here that hasn't bloomed. So you can do edit, and then you can do cleanup, and you could do erase. I should be able to erase with this. There you go. And it's filling in what's in the background there. So actually, I see what I'm doing here. You have to choose erase or retouch to go between these. So like going back to that flower here, you can do edit, cleanup, and let's do retouch. And the retouch here, and the retouch here. Let's see, oops. And then the erase tool will actually get rid of something and it'll do something else too. Let's see if we can find a photo where I can actually like have people in the background. Oh, you know what? There was that one here. Let's go to edit and let's go to revert to original. Remember I had those people here. So let's do cleanup and I want to click on erase and you can see the people get highlighted. So I can click on a group of people here and erase them. So I can brush if I want, but I could also, so like, let's see if I could get rid of this window. Yeah, so I can do it. And I probably want to zoom in more and work with it better there. But yeah, so you've got two ways to deal with that. Let's go and, oh, here is something that is useful. It's not visual, and it has to do with location information. Let's go here and see, in examples. So see this picture here? This is me at the end of a hike in New Zealand, and it has a little indicator here saying that it has GPS information. This one is the same location. What's the difference? Well, I took this one with my Sony camera, and for whatever reason, it didn't connect with Bluetooth like it usually does and get the GPS information. This one was taken with my iPhone. It got the GPS information, but they are obviously taken in the same spot. It's a shame that when I search for location, even New Zealand, this one is not going to come up because it doesn't have the location. Except I can fix that. So with the iPhone 1 selected, I can go to image location and copy location. Then with the one with my mirrorless camera, but no location selected, I go to image location and assign the location. And I can have multiple photos. So I can have like 40 photos taken at this location with my camera with no GPS, and I could select them all and then assign the location to it. And now it knows the location of this photo. So one of the things I like to do, I mean, my camera today, the Sony doesn't usually mess up like this. But one of the things, actually, it wasn't my Sony. That's right. This was taken with my older Canon, which definitely did not do that. My newer camera, my Sony, does get Bluetooth GPS stuff from the iPhone. So the idea is that in before when I had the Canon, I may take like a whole bunch of photos at a beautiful spot like this, and I would always remember take one photo with my iPhone, make it a selfie because then I have me in the photo, right? Or even if it's not a selfie, just take one photo with the iPhone to get the GPS location so that later on I could apply it to all the rest of the photos from the Canon that didn't. So that's kind of fun and neat to do. Um, I want to go one deeper with the ability to capture, like, do markup, right? Now, say you wanted to take me out of this photo and put me into, say, this photo, because I like this one better, right? So how would I do that? Well, you can grab the subject from a photo by control clicking, right clicking, or two-finger clicking, and then you have this nice function here, copy subject, which is great. You can now go to another app and paste it in. But what if I wanted to paste it into this photo? Unfortunately, editing in photos doesn't have layers, so you can't do it. But you can without going too far away from photos. It would be nice to be able to go to edit and then go to markup and then paste it in. But unfortunately, the stripped down markup tools here doesn't have layers either. But what does have layers is the preview app. So with this selected, I can go to image and use an external editor. So image edit with, and I could say preview. Now, obviously, if you've got Pixelmator Pro, if you've got Photoshop, you can do it in that. But let's say you don't. You just have preview. So I'm going to edit this image in preview. And as an external editor, I could save it and it will save back. But remember, I copied myself as a subject. Preview does have multiple layers, kind of. It doesn't really have like a list of them or anything, but you can actually paste in another layer on top of that. And now I can paste that in like that. And then I'll do save and close. And then back here in photos, oh, see, hey, doing a live tutorial. Didn't do it, did it? Let's try it again. Edit with preview, open it up, paste in like that, save it. Let's see if it, yeah, okay, now it did it. So save it and close. So I don't know why I didn't do it that first time, but now I actually did that. And did I have to go outside of photos? Yes. I had to go to preview, but everybody's got preview, and I never had to save anything. So that's kind of nice, right? It's a handy way to do it. I just got two more tips for you, and the last one's dangerous. Um, this last tip here is about color. So editing, you've got sometimes have like stuff that, color stands out, like this mushroom here. If I go to edit, there's this tool that, is all the way down the list. A lot of people ignore it, selective color. And I could go to selective color and I could choose, red, yellow, green, and cyan, blue, magenta here. So let's say, oh, this is kind of red. I'll choose red. And with just red, I'm going to change the saturation. And since this is mostly red, I can change the saturation, and it shouldn't change the saturation of any of the green stuff, just the red stuff. Kind of neat. Let's undo that, and I can use the dropper tool here. And the dropper tool allows me to go and say, grab this color. So instead of red, I'm actually looking at something more specific, and I can change the saturation or maybe like the luminance of it to make that stand out without changing the rest of this. I could go to green here. I can actually eyedrop tool the green to get it to be more of a green, and then take the saturation down. So you can see how I changed the green here, desaturating it, making it black and white while not affecting this. It creates a really cool effect that you can use in various different ways. Um, and to make things kind of stand out or fade things to the back. Sometimes you want to fade stuff, like I love this picture of Jack, but the blue backpack, it's such a contrast to the rest of the colors here that it really kind of draws your eye there, and that's not what that's not the point of this photo. So I'll go to blue here. I'll use the eyedropper tool and even get closer to that blue, and I can desaturate that, or even change the hue of it. So I could change it to like a green and desaturate it a bunch like that. And now the backpack isn't getting in the way as much. Maybe even just get it to some other color that I think is going to affect it less or something like that. So yeah, handy tool to know about. So now let's talk about the dangerous tool. But before I do, let me just check to see if there are any questions. Um, let's see. Removing duplicate photos. I could take a detour to removing duplicate photos. Uh, there is in photos, of course, under utilities, you've got duplicates, and in the background, photos is looking for duplicates. It's doing it in the background, so it's not the kind of thing where it's like load a bunch of photos up and immediately go to duplicates. It's something like deal with it later, and the next day look in duplicates or just occasionally check for duplicates. And what it's going to do is it's going to look for photos that are exactly the same or really, really close. By really, really close, I've observed it finding duplicates where one's a higher resolution than the other. So in other words, maybe you at some point exported the photo and then made a more compressed version of it, and then you brought it back in for some reason, so you have two different sizes. That's why the sizes are shown here when you go to duplicates, so you can see, oh yeah, this is the original, it's 3 megs, and this is the 423K, so this is the one I must have imported in. um, and it also will find photos that are super, super close to each other, like barely any difference. But you can observe what's here, and by looking at the sizes, you get an idea of like the typical thing is these are exactly the same photo. It's in the library twice. Who knows how that happened? Probably user error, but you can merge the two items. And that means merge because these are identical. So it doesn't matter which one is picked, they're the same thing. And if, say, this was an album A and this was an album B, then it's going to merge them. You'll end up with one that's both an album A and album B. So it does the smart thing. And if you do want to make a choice of which one to keep, like one's slightly different or one's bigger than the other, select the one you want and say merge. Or you can control click, I think. Now, I thought there was an option to do it, control click, that made it a little more obvious. So yeah, just go to duplicates. Remember, it does it in the background, so you can't force it. So the kind of thing you just do is like a maintenance task, not as I just imported photos, immediately go to duplicates thing. What are the questions we have? Um, Oh, somebody asked about my Sony camera, how I get it. So there is an app for the Sony camera. I've got one of the Alpha 7 series cameras, and there's an app that you get from Sony. It's like Sony Creative something something. It's in the manual, and it's they tell you about it a million times when you're setting up the camera. So you get that app for your iPhone. And then you set it up. Basically, there's a setting in the camera, and then in the app, it'll show your camera. And then there's a setting for automatically use Bluetooth to capture the GPS information. So when you take a picture with your Sony camera, it sends a message by Bluetooth to your iPhone, says, "Hey, where am I?" And then it gets back a GPS location and attaches it to the photo, just as if the Sony camera had GPS. And also has a bunch of other neat features in that. I'm sure other cameras, like other brands, like Canon and Nikon and stuff, have apps that do this too. But you can transfer wirelessly a photo. So, for instance, I prefer SD card to Mac, transfer my 400 photos I just took, do it that way. That's the best way. But when I was on a boat once, and we saw orcas in the bay outside of Auckland. It looked really cool, and I happened to grab a picture, and there was a kid who was like leaning over the edge and looking at it, and it was like, oh, this kid and the orca, cool. And I showed the dad the photo, and he was like, oh, that's cool. And it's like, hold on. And I did a wireless transfer using that app to my iPhone, from the Sony camera to my iPhone. And then once I had it on my iPhone, I was able to airdrop it to him right there on the boat while we were like on our way back. So that was really cool. So there's cool stuff you can do with those apps. Always take a look at what kind of cool features they've got. So let's wrap this up with one last tip, which is dangerous because it may not work, right? I'm going to use AI. I'm going to use Apple Intelligence, and I'm going to use the whole thing where you use Image Playground, and you could do this with photos. So let's go ahead and let's try it with this little lizard here. I'm going to go to share. And one of the things I should see here in share, oh, I thought I should see it. See, this is why it's dangerous. It should be Image Playground. Perhaps I don't have it set up here on my sample, but you should be able to share to Image Playground. Um, let's see if by launching it, it will now do it. Edit extensions here. Maybe I haven't added it. Well, that's a shame. I won't be able to show that. But doing it, say, on my MacBook, when I was testing this out, I was easily able to share this. Maybe I have to go into here. No. Okay, well, control click. You may want to try this yourself. I see on my normal account, Image Playground in here. And then when I use Image Playground, and let's see if dragging and dropping does it. Yeah, so I'll just drag and drop, but the share should work. I'm going to drag and drop the image from Photos into Image Playground. And let's see if it works. Ah, so there I had to start one and it worked. When I've done this in the past, I was able to click here. Image Playground was something that was listed in share sheet. And then it ended up exactly like this, where it showed the subject of the photo or the whole photo here as one of the things. And then, yeah, here we go. It came up with something based on that. So all I've given Image Playground, no description. I haven't chosen a style, none of these suggestions. And it just said, oh, okay, I'll take that as a suggestion there. And there we go. And then you could add, other stuff to it. So let's say, if I add fantasy to this, plus my picture, it should combine the two of those and just create something fun, right? I mean, imagine if this little guy, is it a gecko? Is that what it is? If this little gecko here was something that you and your kid, oh, look at that. Imagine if this was a picture, you and your kid sat there. I sat there and had coffee with this guy for like 15 minutes in Hawaii once. And he just, walked around while I was drinking my coffee. It reminded me of a TV show where there's similar little character. So I imagine if you and your kid were, eating ice cream and had this guy, and then later on you came back and you said, I'm going to use Image Playground and create this cool little graphic here for my kid, and then write a little kid story about our little friend, you know, that kind of thing. It's really kind of a neat thing to be able to do, uh, just fun Image Playground stuff. But I think a lot of people don't know that you can grab stuff from your photos and usually do the share button here to get to it. But otherwise, drag and drop works as well. So yeah, that's a whole bunch of tips there for using the Photos app on your Mac. It's a really cool, fun tool to be able to play around with your photos. I love using it. I love exploring. I love organizing the stuff just because it's another excuse to look at my photos and share them with people and post them to social media and just remember about what I was doing at that time and the photos that I took and or rediscover things from trips and events of the past and stuff. So hopefully this gave you some ideas and some different things that you can do in the Photos app. It just touches the surface. It's just some cool stuff that I put in a list and wanted to share with you. So I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.